you guys who've joined already. We're just going to wait for a few more people and then we'll get started. I hope you're all okay and enjoying your evening so far. I may sound a little bit funny because I'm a little bit bunged up, but I'm not overly ill. I'm still here, ready to join. Tom, what we'll do is we'll just wait for a few more people to join and then I'll get started. So there may be a little bit of awkward silence. Me too, Carls. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to get started and people tend to join as we're going along anyway. Okay, so welcome guys. Happy Tuesday to another wonderful talk with Peer-to-Peer. Today is a super exciting live. We've got an amazing guest joining us today. I'm going to leave all the introduction to him, but we are all super excited at Peer-to-Peer for this live. And let me just get started with the stats that I normally put forward. So again, we're going to be continuing our conversations regarding knife crime, ways that we can tackle it, and just sharing our honest opinions of what we think about the current status of knife crime within London, and just continuing having amazing guests join us and basically talk about their input to helping create anti-knife crime. So that's basically what we're all here for. So I'll start off with my statistics. So the year ending March 2020, there was actually 84 under 25s. There was 84 young people that died from being stabbed with a knife. There's been a 93% increase of young people being treated for assault by a knife or sharp objects in the last 5 years. And a recent survey on knife crime found that 72% of parents feared their child could be a victim of knife crime, while 8% shared their child had been attacked or threatened with a knife. Now, for me, these stats are shocking, being that I'm a boy mum as well, and I mean, my son's only 10, and I already share that kind of worry and concern that once he does start secondary school, I've already told him that I'm going to be picking him up from school and not really letting him get on buses and stuff like that. But we do also have to think about the real world. So let's get our amazing guest on. I'm going to leave, like I said, I'm going to leave all the introduction to him, and we'll just get started. So Tom, I'm just going to add you. Bear with me. Just wait for him to... Hello.
Oh, thank you for having me.
No worries. Thank you for being here. How are you doing?
I'm very good, thanks. I feel like I've got a lot to live up to now with what all those lovely things you said about me.
Oh, no. No, don't. You know what? Just be yourself, and that's all we ask for. So that's it. So, Tom, I'm going to hand the mic over to you if you want to start off by just introducing yourself and the organisation that you work for. So go for it.
Sure. Yeah, thank you so much for having us. It's really nice to be here. So my name's Tom, and I'm the regional manager for the Ben Kinsella Trust. So I manage all of our operations across London. So for those of you who don't know anything about the Ben Kinsella Trust, we were set up as a charity following the murder of Ben Kinsella, which was in June 2008. Ben was stabbed in a senseless attack in Islington, and died. So at the time, his family, and his sister in particular, who a lot of people will recognise because she was at the time quite a well-known actress, so Brooke Kinsella, she was in EastEnders at the time. So Ben's family, along with lots of other people who were involved, decided to set up the trust to campaign for justice and action for those affected by knife crime, and then also to educate young people on the dangers of knife crime and provide an alternative narrative, I guess, around the choices that young people can make to keep themselves safe.
Yep.
That was the hope and ambition and the vision for the trust. And following a few years of successful campaigning, Ben's family, along with lots of other families, lots of other key partners and stakeholders, did a lot of campaigning, initially around the minimum sentencing for knife crime, and they managed to raise the minimum sentence in the sentencing guidelines to 25 years for homicide involving a knife, and that's now referred to as Ben's Law. So that's one of the really key successes of the trust. And then following on from that, from around 2012, the trust decided that we wanted to do something to really, really tackle knife crime in a preventative way. Yeah. And Brooke Kinsella in particular spent a lot of time, she took a lot of time away from her acting career to go off and research really what was out there in terms of knife crime prevention work. And she did that for a few years, and she actually wrote a paper for the Home Office called Tackling Knife Crime Together. And that was basically like a huge, huge research project, looking at all the different programs, initiatives, projects that were taking place across the country in relation to knife crime. And what we found at that stage was that there was lots of incredible work going on in terms of intervention. So if we saw a young person who was, sorry, I'm on a squeaky chair, that's not good. If we saw a young person who was perhaps starting to drift away a little bit from what we would hope for them, perhaps starting to exhibit some quite negative behaviours, and perhaps starting to kind of succumb to some of those peer pressures, and start making negative choices, that there's a whole array of different services that will surround themselves around that young person and try and get them back on track. Amazing, that's fantastic, that's what we want. So where the Ben Kinsella Trust comes in, and our thinking about that at the time was that why are we waiting for that young person to get to that point? Why don't we do something which is preventative?
Yeah.
Almost like a kind of public health approach.
Yeah.
We've identified an issue which is really harmful to society. Yeah. The government will usually step in and plough loads of funding into that issue to try and prevent it from being an issue. Yeah. So that's really what we try to do in all of our work. And the main inspiration really behind what we now call our Choices and Consequences exhibition was actually, believe it or not, the touring Anne Frank Museum. Okay. Which lots of people are really surprised to hear that, but that was one of the big inspirations behind our work, because what that allowed people to do was to really walk through and experience what it would have been like for Anne Frank and her family to be living in, occupied Holland. Yeah. To really have an emotional, not just a learning experience, but an emotional connection to the issue, in that case, of anti-Semitism and discrimination. Yeah. So we were kind of thinking, well, can we do the same thing with knife crime? And that's what we tried to do.
Amazing.
So yeah, we set up our first, what we now call our Choices and Consequences exhibition in 2012. And the whole purpose of those spaces is to allow young people to walk through the shoes of victims, offenders of knife crime. And we use a wide range of different, very immersive, very kind of experiential spaces to do that. Yeah. So that they're kind of really not just learning about knife crime, but kind of living, breathing, experiencing it,
Yeah.
the effect that it has on
Yeah.
victims, their families, their communities, and
Yeah.
also offenders as well, who are in a sense victims as well.
Of course. Yeah.
So that's what we aim to try and do in our choice and consequences exhibitions, in the workshops. And if you fast forward to 2021, we now have 3 permanent exhibition sites. We in Islington, which is where Ben was from.
That could be my next question, because I'm like, oh my God, I want to go. Sounds so amazing. I want to go.
Yeah, we have one in Islington, which is where Ben was from.
Yeah.
And then we have one in Barking and Dagenham. Just very recently moved into Barking and Dagenham. And then we also have a site up in Nottingham, which is run in partnership with the National Justice Museum.
Yeah.
So those are our 3 sites. That's where we're currently at today.
Do you know what? I just want to kind of mention how unique that kind of idea is. You've never, I mean, as you said, everything's all about just kind of focusing on intervention and dealing with people when they get to a point of when it's too late. But there is that famous saying of prevention is better than cure, and that's exactly what you guys are trying to do. And I think the idea of an exhibition is just, it's never been thought of before. I've never heard of anything like that before. I've never thought about it. But when you actually sit down and you think, wow, okay, I could potentially take a young person who I feel like is not necessarily on the verge, but even just like on school trips and stuff like that, rather than someone coming and standing up in front of them in a classroom, as much as they are extremely responsive to that as well, but they're still within a school setting, which some people react negatively to.
Exactly.
So, and taking them on an educational trip, it's amazing. I think that's such a fantastic idea.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, exactly. That's the whole kind of ethos really behind what we wanted to do. And yeah, it's interesting you say just that whole experience of young people leaving school or whatever youth services they're accessing and coming somewhere different.
Yeah.
It can really be like transformative for that young. And you only have to look into like the museums and heritage sector, bodies of research which show that result in the work that we do. We often get young people engaging with us in a way that their primary caregivers, their teachers, their youth workers, are really surprised by. As that they kind of opened up to us. And sometimes it actually flags up issues that there are the other adults in their life were not aware of. It's obviously very important.
So with regards to young people visiting these exhibitions, is it only when you receive a referral from a school or youth organisation or something like that? Is it only then that you guys will take them to visit these exhibitions, or is there potentially an option for schools to be able to visit them themselves?
Yeah, in terms of visiting, like you said, we're running a preventative program. It's kind of open for all. We want as many young people as possible to go to experience it.
Yeah.
So any kind of school, youth group, youth organisation can book onto one of our workshops, and in certain locations, depending on where you are, it's fully funded and free of charge as well, which is always a plus.
Always a plus.
So yeah, absolutely, it's open to all, and then we do work quite intensively with partners in the boroughs where we're situated, who we get referrals from. In terms of, it's interesting, just picking up on what you said about prevention. Like you said, this is exactly why we wanted to do what we do, is because when going back to that piece of research which I mentioned, when you looked at preventative services for crime and youth violence more generally, there were some really fantastic examples out there across the country, but nothing in relation to knife crime.
No.
It just wasn't covered in the same depth or in the same way as other areas of youth violence. That's why we wanted to do something different. Rather than just going into schools and talking, which there's absolutely a lot of value in that and a place for that. But, you know, the Ben Kinsella Trust, we didn't want to do the same thing, do it less well, and then just compete for funding and essentially dilute the provision rather than strengthen it.
Mm-hmm.
That approach. And yeah, I always use the analogy of like a public health issue. That's something like smoking.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a public health issue and it's recognized as such by policymakers and government. So they'll plow lots of money and resources into educating people around smoking. And as a result, over decades, we've seen the rates just reduce and reduce and reduce.
Yeah.
So obviously no judgment on anybody who does smoke, but that's just one example of a public health approach to something. And knife crime is no different, really. It's something which, you know, there's no escaping it. It kills people.
Yeah.
And you know, the statistics that you read out at the beginning are shocking.
They're shocking, honestly. Yeah. I mean, at Peer2Peer, we kind of try to have the same approach. Obviously, not on the scale of what you guys have managed to do just yet. I mean, we're working on it. We're getting slowly but surely, but we have a similar approach in a sense of we don't want to be that kind of, forgive me for saying it, but that like middle-aged, boring person that goes into schools and just is like, you shouldn't stab. Do you know what I mean? So what we try to do is any peer educators that we actually recruit, we try and recruit someone who's experienced something or has been involved in something that we're going into that lesson to deliver. So say, for example, I had my son when I was very young. I was 16 when I had him. So with the teenage pregnancy that we deliver, I can go in there firsthand and say, right, this is exactly what I've experienced. This is what I've been through. And hopefully it can at least encourage one more person to decide against having a child when they're a teenager. So it's the same with anti-knife crime. So any of our peer educators that we have going into lessons, it's like we tell them stories about things that have happened within their borough or things that have happened around the corner. Do you know what I mean? So they can relate to it a little bit more and understand that it's happening on their doorstep. I went into 2 schools a few weeks ago, and in the space of me being in that school for 2 days, there was a boy that got stabbed outside of one of the schools that was literally around the corner, and another boy was robbed at knife point on one of the buses that all the kids get on after school, because it's the school that stops, it's the bus that stops right down the road from their school. Yeah. So just informing them of things that are going around and happening at that precise moment, I'm hoping that it just informs them of like, you can't be untouchable. It could have been you. It could be you. So if we can try and encourage them to make better decisions, then effectively that will kind of have a knock-on effect, and hopefully everyone will start to make better decisions.
Exactly. And yeah, that we share that same kind of, those same values, that same mission. When I show people around our workshop spaces, when I'm showing adults around, at the end I always ask them, like, at any point during this experience, did I tell you not to carry a knife?
Yeah.
Actually,
no.
Like, no. We try and have that same approach. Like, we don't want any of our work to be that kind of pointing finger. We're instead trying to present the kind of real impact that knife allow young people to not just take away learning, but take away an empathetic emotion to it, and ultimately, empower them with some knowledge and awareness that they can use to make choices to keep themselves safe. So yeah, we're exactly the same at the Ben Kinsella Trust. We don't take that kind of I always say preachy approach. I can never think of a better word to describe it.
Slash teachy approach.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Too preachy, like you shouldn't do this.
Exactly.
That's exactly how we work as well. I mean, it's good when you were talking about empathy and try. What it is as well, it's preventing these kids from becoming desensitized to what's going around them as well, because I think that's also a massive contributing factor as to why people find it so easy to pick up a knife, because that's what they hear about, that's all they see.
And exactly, and we we get an insight into thousands of young people's views on knives and knife crime every year through the work that we do. And the thing that it wasn't until recently when I really thought about it and how shocking it is. But if you ask any young person, and I mean young, you know, 9, 10 years old, why people carry knives, they'll say, "Oh, it's to protect themselves." Yeah, they will arrive at that and think that that's a perfectly reasonable statement. And when you really unpack that and think about it, you know, we've arrived at a place in society where young people think it's perfectly acceptable. I'm not saying all young people, but many young people think that that's a good reason to carry.
That's the first result for a lot of people is, okay, if someone's coming at me, I can pick up a knife and protect myself. There's no like, okay, I'm just going to have a scrap with them or just use my hands. Do you know what I mean? It's always straight away, even when we ask that question. So that's our opening question. Whenever we deliver these sessions, that's our opening question. Why do you think someone would pick up a knife? And straight away, it's for self-defense, peer pressure, to look cool.
Exactly. When actually, and a huge part of our work is around myth busting, you know, busting those myths around knife carrying, because actually, if you choose, and it is a choice, no one is born carrying a knife, it's a choice. If you choose to carry a knife, you only have to look at the facts, the cold hard data. You are putting yourself in more danger. Statistically, if you try to use a knife or have a knife in an altercation, you are more likely to have that knife used against you.
But it's literally over 50% of people who carry a knife are more likely to be stabbed with their own knife. And I put it in perspective, and I'm like, imagine if you are getting into a scrap or a fight with someone, you drop your knife, how easily they could pick up your knife and stab you straight up. It could be.
In like I said, our workshop spaces, they have lots of different immersive rooms, and what the first one is contains like a huge comic strip where we're looking at, you know, fictitious characters and looking at, you know, choices that are made out in one part of that comic strip and all the different outcomes that are, you know, potential outcomes from that one choice, and that's one of them. But there are many, and it's not just you know, yourself that you're putting in danger, it's also other people as well, you know, bystanders essentially. And just going back to what you said about making young people aware about what's happening, like during that time from leaving school to getting home. I saw the Lost Hours campaign in Barking and Dagenham. I think as well, there's quite a common misconception that knife crime is something that happens, you know, late at night. It doesn't. If you look at the statistics, you know, it happens from sort of 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon till 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening. It's those those hours when young people are leaving school and getting home. I think that's like a really vital time period for young people, for parents and carers and youth workers. To really educate young people about choices that they
make. Going back to talking about young people being desensitized to what they're kind of surrounded with. I mean, it's all over social media. Was on a page the other day, and it showed real life footage of a guy being stabbed. He was surrounded by a group of men. They all kind of jumped on him, and then all of a sudden you see like a massive red patch on his top, and he lies down, and it's just like you see the blood kind of flooding out of him. And I just think there should be some sort of restriction on what can actually be posted on social media, because even I found that extremely traumatizing. Now there's a video that we show our young people as part of one of our lessons, and it's a video called DPIT. I don't know if you've watched it. You should watch it. It's a really good short film. I mean, it is suitable for young people 100%, but there's a clip. My phone on charge quickly, sorry. My battery's running low. Bear with me. There's a video, and basically he carries a knife because he got slapped by someone and he felt embarrassed because it had been recorded. And he went home, decided to pick up a knife, and he wanted to show everyone that he couldn't be taking the mickey out of and no one was going to embarrass him. And he wanted to show the world that he's big and bad. So he thought, let me pick up one of my kitchen knives and walk out. Sorry, someone just said in the comments, it's called DPIT. If you type it into YouTube, it's called DPIT. Really, really good short film. And what basically happens is he gets angry at his friend because his friend didn't back him. And this guy who had slapped him comes up to the guy, basically pushes him up against the thing. He was holding the knife and it actually went into his spine and he became a paraplegic, which meant that he could never walk again. His mum was already unwell, that he was looking after his mum, and he was no longer able to do that. So when you see, it's a kind of a little bit like a social experiment as well, because when you see their reaction, it's actually quite reassuring that they're all like, oh my God, oh my God. Like I've had a few girls in the classroom that had actually started crying because they were like, oh my God, this is crazy. But it's as much as it's like a bittersweet moment, because it's like, I don't want to upset you guys, but you also need to know about this. And I'm quite glad that you are like, oh my God, this is terrible. This is the worst thing. That's what you want.
We have, so we obviously in our workshops we're talking about Ben. There's a whole space in our exhibition which is where the young people get to know Ben. There's like pictures of him all over the wall in his artwork, and you get a real picture of what he was like. And then very quickly and suddenly they're taken into a very, very dark room. The walls are black, and they watch a film, a very powerful film, and they see exactly what happened to Ben. They don't see the incident, but they see the effect that it had on his family, on his friends, his community. And we have exactly the same responses. At the same time, is that we have exactly the same approach. We don't want to upset anybody.
No.
That's what we're going to do. And actually, as an organisation, we try to be as trauma informed as we possibly can be, but at the same time, we acknowledge that crying, for example, is a perfectly normal reaction to what we're in. We get exactly the same reactions in our work, and then from there on, the children might be taken into a different space where after seeing that, they're a bit more reflective. More reflective state, and then we can really start to get the messages across around the law on knife crime, around things like prize, about the consequences of knife crime for not just victims but offenders, and seriousness of knife related injuries, first aid even. We also have another interactive space where we use actors, which I won't say what that is, just in case anybody comes to see our exhibition space. There'll be a surprise for you. So on the one hand, we do want young people to have an emotional response, an empathetic response to what we're doing. I think that's quite vital, really, because, like you say, otherwise knives are just normalised. And footage of serious youth violence is just normalised. And I was reading a report a couple of weeks ago which was looking at how people who have been convicted of carrying a knife or even using a knife are almost celebrated and legitimised by big brands. They get sponsored by big brands, which again, it just legitimizes this idea that it's acceptable. When of course it's not.
I mean, I think it's quite similar within the music industry as well. It's this whole kind of gang related, making fast money, being involved in crime is glamorized massively. And this is unfortunately the music that our kids are listening to nowadays. And it's blatantly obvious within the music. They're basically telling you what they're doing. There's rappers that have been convicted purely because of their music, of them ratting on themselves basically and exposing themselves and telling the world what they've done. But unfortunately, because it's in a music form and it's on a catchy beat and this is what young people are listening to, they don't even understand that subconsciously it's being inputted into their brains.
It's, even if it's not, you know, in your face, it's like this subliminal messages that just put across. I saw an example in Barking actually of a really fantastic organisation that were working with young people to create drill music that, you know, just, you know, completely turning it on its head and such a positive kind of experience for them, and very anti-youth violence, very anti-knife. There are initiatives out there like that which kind of will help.
I mean, there's also organisations that and actual churches that are using drill and trap music, but they're using religious words and promoting Christianity and stuff like that, and it's very positive. It's a positive influence, which shows that it's not the actual genre of music that is the issue. It's the lyrics, and this is what people need to understand: is that it's not, we're okay with the genre of music, that's fine, but it's what they're talking about.
Exactly. And also the lyrics, and also the fact that I think as a bystander, there's almost like a direct correlation between the more violent and criminality focused the lyrics are, the more successful that is. Which again, you know, what does that say to a young person? And a huge part of our work is around social media, so it's covered in workshops quite heavily, and also just the idea that being a bystander in relation to crime is also acceptable. You know, we need to create a collective sense amongst our peers, amongst our friendship groups, our families and communities, that actually it's not just a case of never carrying a knife. You know, it's more than that. It's actually setting a standard for and an expectation of your peers and all of your friends that
it's about being that voice.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Tom, not to get too personal, but let's talk about you. Let's talk about why you got into the Ben Kinsella Trust. What kind of steered you towards having such a passion for preventing knife crime?
That's a good question. So I started off life as a music teacher.
Oh wow! Okay.
Like straight out of uni, I did my undergrad degree in music, so that was where I started. So I've always been involved in kind of working with young people in one form or another. And then after that, I decided that I wanted to get into different types of education, and that kind of led me down a path where for a while I went into prison every day.
Wow. Oh my God.
In young offenders, various different things, a lot of stuff around crime, around the law, around their rights when they leave prison. So I did that for quite a while, and then I ended up working for about almost 6 years for an organisation called the National Justice Museum, which I mentioned. And there I was managing all of our youth and education programmes in London, which were looking at similar issues around crime, criminality, generally around the law, the justice system, all that kind of stuff. So in that role, I developed a kind of wide range of different education programs and like social mobility programs. And then, I joined the Ben Kinsella Trust more recently. And it's been incredible to see how powerful and impactful the work is that we do, and just to work alongside such an incredible team of people who just work tirelessly to educate young people about the dangers of knife crime. So that's me in a nutshell.
Amazing. I can say it's a complete drastic change in career choice, but I mean it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I mean, with the majority of us, it was to an extent kind of forced in our faces because my mum was so passionate about working with young people. It was just like as soon as she started youth work, she started off just doing some youth work in Hackney and working with young people who were potentially at risk of going to prison, just getting themselves into trouble. And then eventually she started up the amazing peer-to-peer education because she just loved it. She absolutely loved it. Youth work was her calling. That's what she was supposed to do. And because she needed people to work for the company, that's where me and my sisters got dragged into it. And we all found a passion for it too. So the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And I think it's just a feeling of, you do feel, it's not even for selfish reasons, it's just you do feel like you're kind of giving back a little bit. And it's something that's extremely important. And I just think about the world that we're going to leave behind for our kids and for the fellow young people. What kind of world are they going to be living in? If things are getting worse, then we need to be trying to do our best to make things better before they get to adulthood.
Exactly, yeah. And you know, obviously the Ben Kinsella Trust was founded out of, you know, the most tragic circumstances, but it, you know, in many ways it was and is, you know, a really grassroots organization. It was founded and set up by Ben's family, sat around a table in their kitchen. That was where it started. And by being where we are now, you know, as one of the leading knife crime charities, we still have, you know, all of that. We still almost kind of like feel and live, you know, through Ben's legacy every day. Because his family, you know, his sister is our chair of trustees. His family is still. I saw his parents on Saturday. You know, really involved in the work that we do. So yeah, it's really kind of, it's almost,
it does continue on their legacy, and I think that's the most important thing. I mean, the backstory of what happened with Mum, it's not necessarily as kind of horrific as someone being stabbed to death, and that they're a completely innocent person. Mum was very unwell, and then eventually she just passed. But it still has the same effect. It makes you want to kind of carry on doing what you think they would do if they were in your position.
Exactly. Yeah, you have that. You're almost like a custodian, aren't you?
Yeah.
For that person, for their legacy. And in Barking and Dagenham as well as sharing Ben's story, we've also worked, you know, honoured really to work with quite intensively with 3 families who young people to knife crime, and those are the families of Jodie Chesney, who a lot of people will be aware of.
She was stabbed literally around the corner from where I live. I live in Romford, and she was in Harold Hill, so that was shocking.
Yeah, very shocking. And then also Joanne Kajama and Champion Gander. We've worked with their families, and they've, you know, amazingly and very kindly allowed us to use their stories as another educational tool. Going back to what you were saying earlier about looking at something from a local perspective, that's something that we always try and do. Although knife crime is a national issue, you know, it really does touch every borough, county, town. It's always seen through such a local lens. So we found such an effective way for us to really, really highlight to the young people in that site, in Barking and Dagenham, that this is still a contemporary issue. This is still something we all need to work towards improving and eradicating, and it's one that affects, you know, our local area as well. So I think that local aspect to any kind of violence reduction work is really important.
100%, I agree. And that's what I was saying earlier. When we're going into these schools in Barking and Dagenham, we're actually telling them of incidents that have happened while they was at school the day before, or when they were leaving school. They could have potentially have been one of those young people on the bus, and they didn't even know it had happened, or they got on the bus straight after. Or, do you know what I mean? It's highlighting that all of these problems are happening everywhere around them, and that should be even more of a push or a reason for them to want to make a change and have a voice, and not be that sheep and not follow what everyone else is doing, and to just have their own mind and say, do you know what, actually that doesn't feel right, I don't want to get involved in that, but do you know what, if I feel like my friend wants to potentially get involved with that, I'm going to feel confident enough to say, well, actually, these are the reasons why you shouldn't.
Exactly, and that's kind of the key. That's really the key thing that we're aiming for from our work. We know that 99.999% of young people that we work with have never carried a knife.
Mm-hmm.
So with those young people, what we are wanting to instill in them is that collective sense of responsibility,
Yeah.
to stand up against knife crime, not just to never carry a knife, but to really stand against it,
Mm-hmm.
and to also obviously just make choices to keep themselves safe.
Yeah.
That's the key driver really of all of our work.
100%. So for any of our professionals on here, Tom, do you want to just give us a little insight into what the kind of referral process is when it comes to referring groups or referring young people onto the trust, and what process they have to go through? I mean, as for parents, this is another question, but as for parents, is there a way of them being able to contact the school and saying, I've heard about this amazing trust and I'd really be interested if my son or daughter got involved in this trust? Is there a way of doing it like that as well? So just go through the whole process.
So yeah, I guess it depends who you are. So if you are a school leader, teacher, or a youth worker, you can get in touch with us. If you want to book a workshop, you can do all of that online on our website. It's all fairly user friendly. Obviously, all our contact details are on there if you want to get in touch. And in terms of parents, yes, absolutely. Please tell your child's school that we are in Islington, Buckingham, Dagenham, and Nottingham. And if they want to do the same, they can arrange a visit to us. We also, in terms of other referrals from other youth services, we happily accept those. I guess it would just depend on the specific needs of the group. If we need to have a conversation beforehand, just to make sure that we can make any small adaptations that we might need to. But for all intents and purposes, same process through our website. And then in terms of parents, I should mention that in addition to our workshops, our physical sites, we also have a whole range of online resources as well, and those are for young people, for practitioners, teachers, youth workers, and also for parents.
Amazing.
So there's a huge range of online resources. We also have our KnifeWise app for young people that they can access as well through our learning zone on our website. So yeah, there's many different ways that you can get in touch with us, but our website benkinsella.org.uk is always a good starting point to find out more about what we do.
No, absolutely amazing. I mean, just to kind of wrap things up a little bit, but I do want to just say how amazing the organisation and the trust sounds. It sounds like you guys are doing some serious work out there. You've taken a completely unique approach to knife crime, which I think is appealing just in itself. I think it's absolutely amazing, and it's been a complete honour to have you on and to talk about the Ben Kinsella Trust. And I mean, I myself, just speaking for myself, I'm going to start doing a bit of research myself because I really want to watch these exhibitions. I mean, we had a few people actually comment saying that they watched the video about Ben and it was absolutely devastating. But I also think it's so eye-opening and it's so important. So I really want to get down and watch the video myself. I really do.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do. Yeah, I saw a couple of people in the comments saying that they've been to the exhibition and seen it. So yeah, thank you for having me. It's our honour too. And one thing I should mention finally is that it's very timely because tomorrow actually we have taking place at our Barking and Dagenham exhibition, and at that event you will kind of walk through the footsteps of a young person and experience exactly what they will, and you'll see how immersive and unique and experiential it is. If anybody that wanted to attend that event, which is for teachers, youth workers and practitioners, then you'd get in touch with us by email, via our website. So we can send you a sign up link. And yes, I'm going to hold you to that. I'm going to.
Oh no, Kelly just said the tickets are sold out for tomorrow.
But yes, we're especially in Barking and Dagenham, we're a new service in the area, so we're keen for as many people as possible to come, to walk through the doors and experience what we've got to offer. But at the same time, we also have our well-established program in Islington, and well.
So sorry to put a downer on it, but Kelly has just said that all your tickets are sold out for tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if maybe they can email and see if there's another way, but
yeah. So any kind of queries about anything that we've discussed today, if you just info, so info@benkinsella.org.uk, and I will see what I can do. Maybe I've got a couple of spare tickets.
Amazing. Okay, well, Tom, a massive thank you for joining. It's been an absolute honour, and I'm very, very glad that you decided to join and just continue the amazing work that you guys are doing. It's absolutely fabulous, and hopefully our paths should cross again.
I'm sure they will. Well, and likewise, it's been great to join you, and thank you for having me.
Amazing. And just want to say thank you to everyone who joined. It's always amazing having our lovely followers join. So thank you so much. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their Tuesday evening. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks with another live. Take care, guys. Bye, Tom. Bye.